We are streaming on YouTube and
Now recording.
welcome to the Yanggang Roundtable. It is Saturday, October 31st, 7:13 p.m. Happy Halloween. I have here Ariel, Faye Ku, Mia Songbird, my name is Shale, and we have Aaron Stark here. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Aaron.
Thank you guys for having me.
So we're a basic income advocacy podcast. We talk about poverty, electoral politics, and basic income in whatever order it seems right to at the time. So without further delay, I'd like to open up the floor to anyone who would like to talk.
I would like to kind of introduce our guest a little bit.
Yes, that's probably the best way to start this, right?
For some, I don't know how I managed to meet Aaron on Twitter, but we have someone in our podcast who shared one of your YouTube videos, and it was like a TED Talk that you did. Mm-hmm. So you've done a TED Talk where you came out and told a really important story about yourself. And you had said that you yourself had almost become a school shooter.
Yes, I did.
And so you could understand, like, from a personal perspective, how that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really think that right now there's a lot of kids who are in the spot that I was in 20 years ago. There's a big danger of the kids on the edge getting pushed further out off the edge. Thanks for having me on.
For sure, out on the mark, because everybody keeps saying when they do it, like, what was going through their head, if only we would have known. And here we are. It's like we get to know, like, what went through your head. Is it like a sense of, like, not having hope and, like, feeling that the world has, like, betrayed you and you just want to get revenge?
Well,
maybe
kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And actually what it is, and I apologize for my camera. My phone is not following me.
Okay.
What it actually is all of us, we're all seeking. At the end of the day, we all just want to be held and told everything's going to be okay. We all just want positive reinforcement. We're going to be told that we're doing good, we're good people, and we're going to be all right. Every one of us just. Some of us find that in the most negative possible places, and. If you're looking for positive reinforcement and you get that positive reinforcement from the most negative thing possible, then you're going to do all you can to be as negative as you can to keep getting that reinforcement. Mm-hmm. So, for me personally, I was told a lot that I was that I was worthless, I was nothing, I was dirty, smelly, fat, ugly, and so I made that my reality. If you think I'm the monster, then I'm going to be the monster. And when I reached out for help, it got slammed in my face and was actually turned into some of the most negative times I've ever had. And when you're at the very bottom, I described my life early on as like a big tsunami of pain. Let me, for those of you who aren't listening, I guess I'll give a quick synopsis of my story and what I was. So, I grew up in a really, really violent house, like super violent, lots of drugs and crack cocaine and extreme abuse and rapes and beatings and running from the cops. And we bounced around so much running from the police and getting evicted that I went to like 40 or so different, between 30 and 40. And I never had a stable home, never had a stable life. I was fat, smelly, dirty. I was smart. I read comic books like crazy, but back in the time when comic books were not anything cool, actually very damaging to your coolness to read comics. And it was, I got bullied a lot. Like everywhere I went to, there was a whole new set of bullies, a different group of kids that would bully me. And back then there was a phenomenon that if I went to a school and I got hit with bullies, there'd be 5 or 6 bullies on one side that would really be attacking me, but I'd probably have 4 or 5 kids on the other side that would probably protect me. On any given school I'd go to, I'd have 4 or 5 kids that would be the nice ones, who would kind of like stop the bullying, try to help me. But, and this might divert a bit from my story, but on the topic of all the kids these days, that phenomenon of having that balance now is completely out of whack. Because now instead of having the small group of bullies and having the counterbalance, Now you have a whole subgroup of people that tell you how to be the best bully and teach you how to be the best one, and then give you rewards for being the best. And you end up getting both sides of it from one, and it's super negative. So as I was growing up and going through all of that, got older. My phone. I swear to God. As I got older, I really apologize, guys. The abuse at home and all the abuse from everybody at school just kind of solidified my opinion that I was the monster. That they were all right. I must be as bad as they say I am. I must be the worthless. Is this adult? Can I curse language? Yeah.
Yeah, please feel
So
free.
I must be the piece of shit that everybody tells me I am. There's no way that I could be a good person. And when you're told you're worthless all the time, you believe it. And then you start to do everything you can to make everybody else around you agree with you. And so by the time I was a teen, what was that?
Oh, so you embrace that?
Yeah, you totally embrace that.
Oh.
And by the time I was a teen, I had fully embraced that. Yeah, if you say that I'm a monster, then I guess I am. I'm the worthless, smelly one. I'm the one that's at the bottom. And it became so much my personality that anybody that came in to tell me, "Oh, you're really a good kid and we can help you," you must be lying, and you must be the one that's mistaken, because you really don't know who I really am. If you looked at who I really am, then you'd see the worthless piece of shit that I am. If you think I'm good, then something's wrong with you. And it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. And for me, it ended up where the abuse at home just got epic levels. It just got so bad that I just couldn't live there. And I was homeless. I'd been bouncing around for months between friends' couches and parks and this field behind the restaurant Casa Bonita. If you guys ever watch South Park, they'll have a whole episode about Casa Bonita. That's the restaurant that I was sleeping behind. And so during that time, right around now, early teens, I started cutting myself. It was a form of personal therapy to me. Even though it was damaging, it was how I was expressing the only emotions I had any control over. Because the rest of my world was like this giant tsunami. English. I had no control over anything. I didn't have any agency over my life. I had no agency of where I was living or what was happening with. I'd walk in the house and think I'd go sit down and play a video game or something, and instead I'd step out of my door and have my stepdad literally with my mom against the wall strangling her, and I'd have to beat him off of her, and then she'd attack me because I'm helping him, and it just turned into this massive violence every single minute of the day. And so I ended up in about 16 years old. I ended up in my friend's shed. I had one friend that was actually, he lived at the opposite end of the block of like 12 years old, and he ended up being the biggest friend of my whole life. He was the total opposite. He lived in very loving family life, very loving, stable house. They still live in that house to this day. Like very exact opposite of my whole home. And his shed in the back of his house became kind of like my home base. That anywhere that I was moving, we'd be moving all these crazy places. I'd never have a stable spot, but he'd never move. So I always had his phone number memorized. I always knew exactly where he would be. So whenever I was in Colorado, even if it was 4:00 in the morning and I got kicked out or whatever, I could at least go sleep in his shed because I had somewhere safe. So this night I'm in his shed because his parents wouldn't let me sleep in the house because I was smelly and I was legitimately a bad influence. And he'd been sneaking me out dinners for like the last couple. And so I'm sitting there, and it is middle of the winter. To picture the shed itself, it's not like a tough shed type shed that was the old like wood style roof with like slats, like whole gaps in the slats of the roof. And I'm in this big gray puffy recliner chair, like covered in cobwebs and dirt. And I'm cutting myself really bad, really, really badly. And the blood starts like pooling underneath so bad. And I'm thinking like, I got to get myself some help. I got to do something. If I don't do something, then I'm. And so then when the morning comes, I do the only thing I can think of, and I knock on my friend's back door and get a phone book, and I call social services myself, because they tried to intervene a couple times in my life and tried to tried to investigate, but we always ran away. We always was one of the reasons why we moved. And so I'm like, they got to help me somehow. So I set up a meeting with social services that afternoon. It was early morning when I called. The meeting wasn't till like 4 or 5. By the time I got there, they had also called my mom. They brought her in. And when we sat down for the meeting, I produced a bloody razor blade, one of the old square style that you have in a box cutter. And it was still covered in blood from that. Threw it on the table, and they're like, "So what's your problem?" I'm like, well, that's my problem. I feel I'm at the bottom. I feel like I feel like I have nothing. And my mom, because she knew how to lie, she spent her whole life lying to the authorities and figuring out a way to get away from it. She convinced them that I was just making it all up. I was just doing it for attention, and that I did it all the time, and that it wasn't. And they sent me home with her. When they sent me home with her, as we pulled away, we got like a block or two away from the place. It's me look on her. You should do a better job next time, and I'll buy you the fucking razor blade. And I just kind of snapped and like, okay, well, if you think I'm a monster now, I'm in all the way on the dark. I turned for the next couple of months. It's just scorched earth. Like any bit of positive in my life, I'm burning to the fucking. Because if you think that I'm a monster, then you're wrong. I'm going to prove it. And so I'm doing everything I can to destroy every relationship I have. I'm lying from friends. I'm breaking shit. I'm stealing things. I'm being as abusive as possible to people around me. And it works. I shove away everybody around. And again, I end up at the very bottom. This is like 9 months later. And I'm again in the field behind Casa Bonita. I've been sleeping there for a couple weeks at this point. I hadn't been able to even change my shoes in like a month, but didn't have socks on the whole time. My feet were literally rotting off. I was surviving on living off of free samples from the grocery store in the morning and whatever I could find out of the. And I think again, I need to get help. I need to do something. I'm at the very, very bottom. I have nothing else. Across the street from the school I was at the time, there was a building that said mental health. I didn't know what it was for. I just knew it said mental health. So I'm like, I'm not going to warn them this time. I called ahead last time, and that was so terrible. I'm not going to tell anybody I'm coming. I'm just going to go show up. So I walked up to the building, and it was a mental health place. I go inside, and they'll have me meet with a therapist. And or a counselor, not a therapist. And I don't really remember what she told me, except for the last thing that she said, because it was the one that hit me the hardest. She said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. I can't." And I walked out of the door, and my brain just shattered. Like, just completely broke into 1,000 pieces. And that whole tsunami of pain that I described earlier, that giant hurricane that I was living in, I found out what was at the bottom of it. And underneath all of that, it gets really quiet, and it gets really still, because when you really don't have anything left to care about, and you don't have anything left to live for, then you don't have anything left you don't have any emotion left to care about. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to hurt me? You're going to chop my arm off? All right, well, then I might die. What, you're going to call the cops? Okay, then I might end up with a meal. Like, there's nothing but there is no more down. And that is the scariest place. And when I hit that spot, a couple things crystallized in. So in the time when I was bouncing around from place to place, I didn't have many friends, but I had what I called disaster groupies, which were people who were around me to kind of like live vicariously through my damage, like watch the car crash. They didn't really have anything like me around in their world, but they really wanted to have something dark. So they were kind of like pushing me, encouraging me into that. And when we would hang out, instead of talking about like girls or sports or games, we'd talk about killing people. We'd sit around and talk about, well, if you were going to kill 20 people, how would you? And if you were going to blow up a school, what would you do? And that was like the fantasy football of our group. And so I had all the plans. I had already talked through. I already knew exactly what I was going to do, and it just snapped into being in my brain. I knew exactly where I'm going to go. I'm either going to go right through those windows right there into the school, right through into the food court, or I'm going to go down to the mall right down the street and go into the food court there. And I knew where to get a gun. The gangbangers down that hung out at the school at the ROTC building, they would bring handguns to school all the time. They sold drugs to my family. They knew I wasn't a narc. I was sleeping in the park all the time. So I went up to him like, hey, can you get me a gun? Hopefully one that shoots a lot of bullets. I'm like, yeah, dude, whatever. Give me an ounce of weed. And remind you, this is mid-90s, so it's not like it is today with marijuana culture. So that's like $300 or $400 worth of drugs. But for me, it wasn't anything. My family was a bunch of druggies. I literally went into my mom's house, kids sleeping on my mom's floor. I steal a fucking ounce of weed out of his pocket and took her to the guy. And I gave it to him, like, all right, dude, give me 3 days. I'm like, okay. So I have my plan set. And the only difference between the two targets would have been the time that I got the gun. If I got it in during school, I would have attacked the school. If I would have got it after school, I would have attacked them. And so, luckily, I wasn't as alone as I thought I was. Looking back on it now, I didn't think of this at the time, but looking back on it now, I think I was saying goodbye. I think I was like finally closing off friendships, and I went to Mike's house. When I knocked on Mike's door, he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know what I was planning. He didn't know anything about what was happening. He just saw that I was really, really in bad shape. And he brought me inside and was like, dude, you're going to be okay. Have a shower, sit down, have a meal. Like, you're not a monster, dude. You're all right. You'll be all right. And it changed my whole perspective. Like, being treated like a person when you don't even feel like a human will change your world. And it did to mine. And I stayed at his house for the whole weekend, and I never went and got the gun. And he diverted my whole plan. Saved my life. He's still my best friend.
So it's like indirectly, not only did he save your life, but he like saved a whole bunch of innocent people that you were planning on just like randomly shooting up.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, which is a point that I want to bring up, that it was innocent randoms. Like I wasn't targeting people at the school. It was, my actual goal was to target my parents by making them deal with having made me. I wanted them to have to deal with making the monster that. And
So you were going to target just random innocents. So it could fall on your parents. Is that
Well,
what
it's
you're?
also because they treat him like he didn't exist, like he didn't belong, like he wasn't a human being. So like, okay, since you're just going to ignore me or not listen to me, listen to my cries for help and stuff, well then I'm going to make you listen.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're going to listen to me now, and
Yeah.
I'm going to scream out loud enough that someone's going to hear me. But my goal wasn't like it wasn't. And from all the research I've done on mass shootings and talking with both shooters and victims and potential shooters since I came out, I think that my story of my instigating incident is much more common than what people would think. That it's much less common to have bullies targeted at school, and it's much more common to just be an explosion of I need to scream, and this is how I'm going to.
Just
And
yeah.
yeah,
See, guys.
and even now, the kids a lot of the kids who would have been my victims now are friends of mine. Like,
So this is why it's so important that I think that when we talk about like, oh, who can't this is kind of why I'm kind of against this. Oh, it's just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and every man for himself.
Yeah, pop a
I think
pill, get
I think that
counseling, get a job.
I think that's
no.
bullshit. I think that's complete
No.
and utter bullshit because when
that
random
right there, and I'm sorry, go ahead, and I'll
oh, okay. Because I'm saying that once some person explodes and you could have helped that person, I think you have to drop this bullshit about like, oh, like every man for himself, and this is like you know everyone has to, and just don't help people because like they should be able to help themselves. Go ahead.
Well, when people talk about toxic masculinity, that's what I think. That right there, that phenomenon of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, act like a man, take like a man, that's the toxic masculinity. I talk about.
One
We
Because
percent.
were evolved to be
there's
social creatures.
yeah, and we're taught as men from early on. We're beat into us that you can't cry, you can't show emotion, you can't you can't express yourself. In between our parents instilling that in us and our social circles instilling that in us, where if we do, then somehow it makes us look weak, or somehow it's somehow that makes us less. When I challenge anybody, tell me I'm weak. Tell me that me standing on stage in front of millions of people telling that story is weak, and that you thinking that you're the tough guy is somehow stronger.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I don't see how that's even possible.
Right.
And that, to me, that to be able to get in touch with our emotions as men and be able to express that we cry, we get sad, we're people, we're humans, we're. I think it's a vital step that we need to do, because
Yeah. I mean,
take it on the chin, take the stuff upper lip. Fuck that, man.
The other thing that like Aaron is you know is pointing at is also like that he brought up, whether it's directly or indirectly, this was also the stigma around those in power, like parents or doctors. Like the moment when you mention your abuser, like when Aaron mentioned like his abusive mother and stuff, people automatically assume that, like, and this happened with me and my friend over in South Africa, along with my friend over in Canada. People automatically say, well, at least you're being taken care of. You have a roof over your head, you have food on your belly, at least you have a father, at least you have two parents, at least you're being looked after. They have that dangerously close-minded perspective,
So
and then they
us,
wonder why people turn
yeah.
out to be
So,
either dead or these mass shooters or
yeah.
whatever, or
But
or
by the
just
way,
or just yeah.
yeah, Aaron, have you watched the Joker movie?
I have, yes.
So
And
what do you think?
well, I think I have varying opinions. I'm a comic book geek,
Okay.
so first off,
Okay.
let's get that one out of the way. It is not
All
a
right.
Joker movie. That's
That
it's as a psychological movie, it's good.
right.
As a Joker Batman movie, it is not one.
Right,
So
right. I know,
Yeah.
I know. I'm just talking about, like, let's like put aside Joker and
I know. I
Batman.
just had. I'm just a huge comic nerd. I had to get that part out of the way first.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
But
Let's get that part out of the way.
as the psychological drama of it, I think that it did a good job expressing the frustration that a lot of people feel. I think that I think you hit it on the head earlier, just a second ago. That it really is the thing that binds us the most and that breaks through all those barriers is we all feel this way. We all have these kinds of feelings of loneliness and pain and isolation. I think that's the only real bipartisan thing we have. I've been able to have that same kind of tearful discussion about the what people feel, and that they feel alone and they feel like no one's listening to them and they feel like the whole world is isolating them, from a homeless guy in a shelter and the head of Channel 9 News right after a news interview, literally the entire head of the TV station crying, and same conversation. It's
Mm.
it's the those barriers that we think we put up. We spend our whole lives sectioning off ourselves from the rest of society. We either our
Yes.
social status or our race or our gender or our age group, and we put up these barriers that section us off from other subgroups. And if we look at what is outside of all those barriers, that line of pain breaks through all of that.
Yeah.
I think that right now we're on the edge of a social split, and that social split is getting pushed by people who want to accelerate the aggression and the divide among our people. And I
Mhm.
think that as humanity, it is imperative on us to see the shared humanity in each one of us, especially the ones we disagree with and dislike. The
Yeah,
ones
yeah.
that
100%. I think that
Amen.
what do you think that, like, that some of it is just the culture? Sorry, but it's gotten really toxic with this kind of like cutthroat, one up everybody else and try to like get the prize no matter who you have to like leave behind or screw or something like that. I think it's very bad, and that's why we see so much of this in the United States, because we have this culture of like, oh, if I'm not famous and if I don't get like 1,000 hits, then like I'm a nobody or something like that. I think we have to like pull away from that.
Well, that's exactly the phenomenon I was describing earlier. It's people seeking positive reinforcement and finding it in negative. At the end, at the heart of that is exactly what I said. We all just want to be told we're okay. We want to be validated. We want to be told that, hey, you're doing good. And if the only place you're going to get that is on some social media site that where you were expecting hearts and likes, and you're getting judged by all of your friends on whether or not you're getting those hearts and likes, some kind of weird status, and that it, then that's where you're going to put your effort toward. If the way that we break that, in my opinion, is by opening up our social circles and by talking about things and giving that social adulation without having to have the caveat that you need to entertain me for me to like you. Like, you need to do
Oh,
something
you
cool for
hit
me to
the
give you the
nail on
heart.
the head with that. You hit the nail so hard on the head. You know, Aaron, like, I told everyone, I'll tell you, I called into this guy. His name was CoffeeZilla. He exposes, you know, fake gurus and scammers and people looking for money. And then
I've
I
watched
was
him.
just
Yeah.
yeah. I was just like airing out my grievances, and I got people in the comments saying like, "Oh, this guy isn't cool. This guy isn't fun. Why do you even have him on here? Why this? Why that?" But then when I started rapping and when I started entertaining them, and then all of a sudden, like some of the people were still haters, but some of the people thought, "Oh, this guy is cool now." But it's like, why can't you just listen to a person's like grief and pain and
Right.
frustration
It's just
without them having to entertain you? You know what I mean? And the
Exactly.
thing is because like we always care about celebrities when they're down on hard times or when they're doing drugs or things.
yes.
Someone
Uh-huh.
someone who's in the public eye getting all the attention, but it's just like some random, person that could be anybody. It's like, oh, they're just complaining, or oh, they didn't pull themselves up by their bootstraps, or oh, they just
Well,
didn't get enough education. It's like, sorry, fuck you. I want to tell those people.
well,
It's like
but on that front, I also have a flip side to that too, though, because celebrities are also just humans who happen to be luck into a job that's badass. Like
Mhm.
I've been able to briefly brush with the non. I've gotten some of the fame, none of the fortune. So I've been able to make none of the money, but get some of the small bits of notoriety. So I've been able to slightly brush that, and and that was one of the most eye-opening things that I saw was that that same isolation that I felt of people thinking that I was a monster is similar to what that Nine News CEO, literally the entire head of the news station, this like 50-something old lady, I'm sorry, 50-something lady that was working there in the station, and she was telling me that she felt like nobody would talk to her and she was extremely isolated because her position made it to where everybody was afraid of her and implied that everybody had to be scared of her, and so no matter what she was in, no matter what social situation she was at, she was the implied authority and she could never let it down. She could never just set her stuff down and be like, hey, I'd like to watch Thundercats today. And being able to see that all of us, every one of us poops. Every single one of us. Every human being poops. Every one of us at one time of the day has to sit on that toilet with our pants down and figure out how to get the stuff out of our body into that toilet. It's a human thing. That alone should tell us that there's things besides our social realities that bind us together. And yeah, I shouldn't have to entertain. But on that entertaining front, one of the coolest phenomena that I've seen is, guess offhand. So I got 50-something thousand responses immediately from me coming out with my of flooding in my inbox of people telling me not only that that's a cool story, but hey, this is all of my pain and here's everything that ever happened to me. So I got tens and tens of thousands of diaries of people all over the planet. Guess how many messages I've received, personal messages to me, that have been negative? Just take a guess. Out of all of the 50,000 messages I've received, how many have been negative?
10,000?
Huh?
Oh, 10,000? I don't know.
5.
Oh,
Not
wow.
5,000. 5.
And they're probably just like trolls and bots. It's like
15 altogether. 10 of them were blood related to me.
wow.
So, and if you in the comment section, if you look at it, whenever someone tries to troll me, the other trolls attack that person, and they're like, "Dude, stop trolling this guy. He's just talking."
Right.
It's the weirdest. It's the craziest thing I've seen because and I think that is a sign that we need to open up more about this stuff and let these people talk about it and instead of just saying, "Hey, that guy's an incel," we need to not talk about we need to not talk to him. We need to push him off the side because he's an incel.
Yeah.
He just hates women. Instead, talk to the guy. Open up. Try and tell him that his opinions are wrong. Tell him that that his stuff is backwards. But dialogue with him and do it without attacking him and acknowledge that he's just living life the same way you are. And yeah, that's what I do with Trump supporters.
Me too.
I
Yeah.
I would really like to ask you about past that moment a little bit, recovering from that kind of trauma. Like you had that moment of realization, but how did you get it to stick? How did you change your life and push forward past all that, having lived through what you lived through?
That's a great question. Well, the biggest point in that is that it's not like a light switch. It wasn't just flipped off because Mike helped me that day. It wasn't like, oh, gee, all of a sudden everything's sunshine and rain. I was still living in that exact same hell for years. The living situation didn't change. My attention and my personality shifted more inwardly, honestly. I became more self-destructive. I wasn't suicidal at that point yet because I had a lot of support from Mike for a period of time, and I gained a little bit more stability for a brief period. But over the next couple of years, I stayed in a depressive state until I finally hit a spot. And it was, again, here's another quick story about Mike. So Mike's a very social guy, and he has a social circle of his own. And one of them is this girl, Amber. And we would always go over to Amber's house to go hang out, go like watch a movie, chill, whatever, go spend the day. But she was his friend. You know, like I was his friend, she was his friend. We just kind of met because of him. And she was always nice to me, wasn't ever rude or nothing, but I wasn't the one contacting to arrange the hangout. And so it was coming up to my 19th birthday. And I was planning on killing myself that night. I had gotten a bunch of drugs. I had stolen a bunch of prescription pills from my mom. Stole a bunch of cocaine from my mom. I got a whole bunch of LSD because I was tripping acid at the time a lot. I got like 25 hits of LSD. And I was planning on going to that field behind Casa Bonita and taking a whole bunch of drugs and killing myself on the night of my night. And
Uh-oh.
Oh no!
Dang.
What a bad time for that to happen. I was paying very close attention.
Aaron,
It
we
looked
can't
like
hear
someone
you
from
right
the media
now.
didn't want
so-
that to happen.
Yeah, I was
See if you need to
completely
restart,
engrossed
or-
in that terrible story.
Can you guys hear us?
I can hear you.
We can
Okay.
hear you.
I wish.
tried to talk
I wish
last
Aaron.
time.
Aaron, can you hear me? Aaron.
Oh, maybe he's going to try to like restart it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, very good.
Man, I've been to a bad emotional place, too. I understand that. Like, I've not been to that exact place, but
Well, I mean, to his point, like, yeah, we all feel that way, but what I'm noticing is that because of the fact that, like, people are like, it's almost like they're embarrassed, it's like
Yeah,
they're
that's-
looking at
that's-
themselves, and they're
nothing
like
to be
they're
embarrassed
like
about.
dissing each other, and making these sorts of topics like taboo, even though it's extremely common, and so many people relate. They
save
just-
face, but
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean,
And what are we saving
it's
face
kind of
for?
it's
To
kind of
whom?
like our
Just to each
neo
other, right?
our neoliberal.
They're just running away,
But think about it though. It's like we're just equals. We're just like trying to save face to each other, and it's like it's ironic that we're ashamed of each other secretly.
Right. Well,
ashamed to each other
it's
secretly.
It's this kind of like neoliberal institutions that are like, no, be good little worker bees. There's no need to like talk about like your pain and anger and
Yeah, they're
anguish.
passive
Right,
like
toxic
right.
torch.
I'm really glad that we can push back against that. We're doing a great job.
Right.
If I do
Yeah,
say
because-
so myself.
right. Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
not
for
just us, but
sure.
an entire cultural moment of hundreds of
Yeah,
thousands,
exactly.
millions of
Because
people like us.
because we see because the loons that run the loony bin want us to think that something is wrong with us, but not their entire system.
Thank God
But,
you're
okay,
back, Aaron.
yeah.
Oh my God.
Glad you're back, Aaron.
Well,
Yeah.
You were,
Sorry
Thought we
about
lost
that.
you.
we were getting
Must have-
good.
must have
Like
had
No
a-
problem,
Yeah,
Aaron.
we were
We're
getting
just,
all like,
you
ooh,
know,
what
we're just
happens
adding
next?
our support, saying how we are glad that the culture is changing to allow and
shifting,
accept
yeah.
the serious discussion of what we're talking
yeah, and
about.
I also, and we were also making the point that it seems like Aaron, like you mentioned that like we're like we have those same sort of feelings, but it seems as if like people have become so accustomed to corruption that we've seen from like top officials and whatnot that they're becoming corrupt themselves. They're like accepting it, becoming the new normal, and people are like, you know, it's like they hate seeing a reflection of themselves, even though we're so much alike. They're like, oh, I don't want to. I want to be away from that person. I don't want to do this or that for any sort of reasons. You know, even though they have the means, they have the like some of the energy to like, you know, do good and like help that person because they have plenty of energy when it involves the negative. Like
When it involves
you know,
punishment or hating, but
Well,
what about
and that's because they're getting pushed by accelerationists. They're getting pushed by people who are trying to divide it and shove it all apart. Like
So,
straight
people
up,
at the
that's
top-
totally
Aaron,
true.
Aaron, you
Well,
had been cut
the
off in the
story,
middle
yeah.
of your story, and you had gotten to the part where you were thinking of killing yourself by taking a lot of things that you thought would be
Okay.
sufficient to do the trick.
Oh, that's where it cut off?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I didn't get to you didn't hear the best part then. So
No.
I was that night. I was planning on killing myself, and instead, so that afternoon, I didn't think I was trying to do my best to not act like anything was going wrong. Like I was doing my best to disguise it and act like I wasn't having any problems, that I wasn't depressed, that there was nothing wrong with me, that I was just having a regular day because I had interventions, and because Mike had stopped me before. Like I doing my best to just put it under wraps so I wanted to end my life. I didn't want anybody to stop me. So that afternoon, I went to Mike's house, and Mike's like, "Hey, we're gonna go kick it at Amber's house." And I'm like, "Okay, fine." Thinking it was again like nothing wrong. We're gonna go there, watch a movie, listen to an album or something, and then I would go back to the field and finish my plan that I had set. And we showed up to Amber's house, and instead, it wasn't that at all. It was actually a surprise birthday party for me. And there was like 14 people there, all ready to. They had baked me a blueberry peach pie, and they were all there to have a birthday party for me. So I went to the bathroom, dumped all the drugs in the toilet, and that was the last time I ever tried to kill myself.
Oh wow! Look at that! Look
Yeah.
at that! Hang on! I think
And
we're hitting on.
and just as a quick point, both Amber and Mike are still very close friends to this day. Mike is
They're
my
still
absolute best
there.
friend.
I mean,
Still there.
look at that!
talk
Look
to
at
him all the
that!
time.
Just look at like random acts of kindness, just like that can
Wait,
just
wait, that wasn't
change.
random. They were friends.
Right.
That was they had planned, and it was totally a surprise though. I was not expecting it. I
but if
thought it was just going to be a day,
if it's a
and there was a whole
surprise,
house full of people.
I do
Yeah.
want to. I
Yeah.
want to make a quick point,
So-
real quickly. Because I do have two Mikes and Ambers in my life, as you say, and their names are Jose Bouchard and Melissa Nido. They're the ones who kept me from, you know, ending my life or becoming the worst version of myself. Like especially Jose, but the over in Canada, like the ones who tried to get rid of her were like those part of like the Western culture, and she had to escape. The only way for her to like save her life, you know, and like get away from all this torment or whatever, was go to a entirely different culture, which was the French. These conservative French, they were the ones who saved her, and I'm like, that's why, and I'm like, that's why I always like. I always like you know reference them a lot on various other things. And there was also like militia, because I couldn't always rely on Jose, you know, and but she's all the way over in South Africa, but she was there for me when I would have those moments of like, okay, I can't take it anymore. I want to end it. Like it was it didn't just stop at like one point or whatever. It was like never ending. Plus, I'm still stuck in the same place that has put me in that sort of mindset in the first place. I haven't left yet.
And that's when
So
the next step of my process came into play, because I still was too. I was also my living situation hadn't changed even to that point. I was still, my family was still the same way, still the same abuse, still the same drugs.
yeah.
I made a turn at that point personally, and I went on a process of acknowledgement where I went to the people who hurt me and confronted them, but not in an accusatory way. Not to be like, you hurt me, you did this, and you need to pay, but just to be like, you did this. This changed our relationship forever. Our relationship is different from here on out, and this is just the way it is. And it had nothing to do with their response to it. Some of them got pissed off at me. Some of them didn't care. Some of them ignored me. Some of them screamed and cried and begged me not to drop them out of my life. And it had nothing to do with what their response was. It was getting it off of my chest and realizing with myself that this is the reality that I'm living. And the only way to move out of it is to keep on moving. And
So to clarify again, the first time that the first story that you told us happened at what age?
Right about 16, 17.
And then the second story happened when you were turning 19, and that's how you had the birthday party. But this continued on for you. So see, like the thing that I think is most wonderful about you coming out to tell these stories is that whenever something happens, we say, oh, there's that senseless violence. It's senseless. It's just nobody can understand it because there's this one bad apple or one person who's gone nuts, and we don't know why. And so we just continue on. We never process like the schools. No. After that incident, it was a non-incident. So nothing happened. The school did nothing, right? Parents did nothing. Nobody did anything. It's something that happened inside you. But even when something does happen, right? There's an actual incident.
Well,
for example,
like society really needs to hold up a mirror to itself. And
yeah,
I think
we don't ever know what to talk about. We talk about guns, and then we talk about mental health, and that's getting a little closer. But we never talk about how society is structured. We don't talk about the school itself and how it, manifests all this bullying and difficulties.
Yeah. Let's.
So that's a great point you just brought up, and that's why exactly I personally avoid, except for this description of it, which I try to bring up whenever the subject is brought up. I purposefully avoid bringing up the words gun control or mental health when I'm talking about my stories, because both of those obfuscate and distract the point in polar opposite ways, but with the same result. When you bring up gun control, you get lost in the minutia. You get lost in, well, is this a bump stock? Is this ammunition? Is that an assault rifle? Right. And the people get bogged down in the details because they're dug into their trench position, and so you get lost from the actual point of the argument. Mental health is the exact opposite, but very similar problem, where it's this big gray amorphous blob where you don't really know what it is, and you can't really wrap your hands around it because you can't really understand it all. So you can't really get what the whole point is.
Okay.
So
and,
both of those distract.
Don't here. Don't be assholes to each other. And there's more than that.
Well,
I just want.
It's even in my opinion, you have to get more granular. You have to get, because the problem that we have is we label, and as soon as we label, then we sectionify and we compartmentalize. And the only way to break through that is to get as granular and as human as possible. I don't talk about how I had mental health problems. I say I was abused and neglected because my parents treated me like shit my entire life, and I thought the world wanted to destroy me. That was, and without that, you're not going to see the human of who I really am. You're going to see the story that you're going to want me to be, because you have a preconceived notion in your head of who almost school shooter might be. But if you don't see the human of who I actually am and the full colors of that picture, then it's going to stay that stereotype. And we have those stereotypes with all of our different social subsets we have. If you say Trump supporter right now, people will pull up the image in their head of who they think a Trump supporter is. Okay. Yeah. Same thing with every group. Same thing with Yang fans. Same thing with Bernie fans. Same thing with Obama supporters. Same thing with every subgroup we have. You pull up a stereotype. That stereotype, while it might be based in some fact of a past reality, is not the complete reality, regardless of what group you're looking at. The truth of the matter is, the individuals involved in that are flawed, are human, and go through the same shit that you do every single day. And
Well,
and keeping in that stereotype. Go ahead.
leaning hard on people's humanity is what Yang is trying to do.
Yeah.
We want to talk about how not left, not right, forward.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like we want to talk about structural change because there's
Yes.
both of those stories have a
But-
problem, which is that the guns and the mental health all talk about
Yes.
personal responsibility.
Right.
And it's all about
like,
just this one individual.
yeah.
But
Instead of
we want to talk about
Ariel,
actually
could
changing
you make
poverty.
your face down, please?
We want to actually alleviate poverty for everybody. We want to make changes that is going to be all across the board, help everyone at the same time, all boats rising with the tide. And so so that's the kind of thing that we're really all about, is trying to identify things where society has created these institutions, right? I feel like we've institutionalized our children, for example, in school.
Yeah.
And if we just eliminate the mandatory nature of school, it would make it a lot better for everybody. So I'm personally homeschooling with my son right now.
I think that that's a social set by social set, individualized kind of thing. I mean, there are, like, for instance, my son. I can't do homeschool with him because he cannot take it. He does not absorb it. It doesn't work. I've tried it. He doesn't get it. He needs the structuralized. He needs to have that institutionalized nature to be able to absorb the information. My 9-year-old, however, and he's 17. My 9-year-old is on remote learning now because of COVID, and she took to that like a duck to water. Like, she just it's just like playing her on her tablet with her games. Now she's in a Zoom meeting, and now she knows it's nothing. And so that, I think that what we're hitting right now with the schooling in particular is a good spot to make a lot of those institutionalized changes to where we can adapt the new norm of e-learning for most of the kids and see what that middle ground is for kids like my son who need to have more of a structuralized learning, and kind of like spread that responsibility out more to get more of that, to decentralize it more. Like,
I think
I don't want to necessarily want to remove a mandatory responsibility to have schooling, but I think removing a mandatory responsibility for what that schooling entails and what form it takes.
Mandatory as in you must go to the public school or you're truant. Right?
Oh,
I think that's what I mean. Like, nobody forces you to go to the library to check out books.
Before we get too far off it, I do really like
good. You provide a service, and then people partake of it if they, how they want. Whereas right now, school feels kind of like incarcerating children to me when they can't leave, they can't go to the bathroom. There's a lot of needs they can't meet easily, without. It's all about the school and the importance of the school's needs.
Right.
Anyway,
and we can't even have that conversation of like, we had this rash of school shooting, but why does everyone feel so negatively about school? That's not ever considered. School can't be failing kids.
Exactly.
It can only be failed.
Like,
the kids are wrong.
It's
that famous Simpsons quote where Principal Skinner's like, maybe I'm wrong, and then he's like, no, it's the children who are wrong. That's America.
Well, and I think that right there is, in my opinion, the adults for a long time have been in cover your ass mode, and it has been so detrimentally toxic to the long-term fundamental growth of our children. When I go to approach a school, okay, I went and spoke at my kids' high school, and I spoke to the whole psychology department at the school. It was right after I came out with my story, and my kid's psychology teacher loved my story, so that he got me into there to talk to him. Talked to like 500 of the kids in the high school. The kids loved it. After the speech, I got swarmed with students coming up and talking to me, asking me questions, the most personal kind of things. Kids who don't open up about things would open up to me. It was extremely cathartic and very personal. The authorities were scared shitless because I was on stage talking about almost being a school shooter. So they wanted to indemnify themselves and make sure that they weren't going to be liable for anything, and make sure that all their dots were covered because they were scared shitless about anything. I haven't seen a single negative impact, not a one, from any of the kids I've ever talked to about my story. Not a single kid that I've talked to personally about it has ever reacted negatively to my story. Not even administrators or adults. If I talk to you about this personally, I have not had a negative reaction yet. The
Well, now
administrators,
that's where I was.
before they see it, before they see anything, the
That's the
administrators
part where I
shut it
think
down because. Oh, go ahead.
if you had actually gone through with either of those acts, right, then I think there may be more negativity, and so that's also a real issue
Absolutely,
for people.
For
Yeah.
sure.
absolutely.
Well,
Well, and that's a lie.
well, I
Go
think
ahead.
the thing is that like the institutions that are supposed to like reduce stress, anxiety, and isolation, I think those are the biggest ones. These three: stress, anxiety, isolation. So some of
Mhm.
these institutions actually end up making you more anxious, more stressed, and feeling more isolated. It's like they're doing the opposite of their jobs, and that's
Yeah.
disgusting. And then they're saying, oh, people, oh, it's people have problems. No, these institute, if you ever saw the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, we got to get rid of all the nurse ratchets in our institutions, because there are a lot of them in there, and they just do it for the paycheck, and they just do it for the power, and they care nothing about people, and that has got to change.
I would like to take a quick moment here to ask a question. Since we are on the subject of bad institutions, I'm sure you've been contacted by a few different places that maybe wanted to talk to you and discuss with you how to make better movements
Mhm.
forward and such. What are some good places that people could turn to for resources? Places that aren't going to make things worse in one way or another.
Whew. That's a hard question, sadly. I'd say that the best place to go is personal therapists would be the best one to go to. I think that right now we need to just come together as a people. We need to rely on each other now. I don't know right at this exact moment if there is a institutionalized anything that can be trusted to help without extreme damage. That's a really, really hard question. That's
When I was going to school as a kid, I'm like 46 now, but when I was a kid, there was occasionally a psychiatrist assigned to your school, and occasionally somebody who was troubled would get sent to the psychiatrist to go talk to them. But nowadays, there's no such responsibility taking in any schools that I know of, and there's
it's it's
there's no
it's worse
longer
than that.
support.
It's worse than that. I'm talking. One of the guys I've spoken to over my time with this was one of the main trauma therapists that had to be in the room right after Newtown, right after all those the grade schoolers were the 22 preschoolers were shot and killed. He was the main therapist that was in the room right after the shooting and had to help the family directly afterwards. And he was telling me that when you're looking at the counseling in schools, it used to be that every school was mandated that they had to have at least one or two, depending on the district, school counselors available for the students during school hours. There are multiple states, especially in the South, where there isn't a school counselor in the state. There's not even one anywhere. They don't have them. They don't have the infrastructure to be able to go in there and talk to anybody.
And
I think
instead of
that's part
psychiatrists,
of the.
uh,
I think it's because the adults keep on wanting to cover their own asses. The adults, when the students, what I found with my "You Are Not Alone" group that I have is that people are craving a place to talk, because when they talk to the authorities about anything, if they say a trigger word, if they say one thing that might set off some alarm bell, then there's going to be a cop showing up, and that's going to cause more damage than just talking about it. And
but
so
Oh
they
yeah.
don't
instead of
have
the
any.
psychiatrist, they have now active shooter, drills where they
Yeah,
teach you how to behave,
yeah,
and they
yeah.
also
No,
have
I was
just a minute,
approached by a
Zephyr.
SWAT team. I was approached by a
And,
SWAT team during the beginning of this that wanted me to go along and try to help them do in school active shooter preparation drills. And I'm like, dude, you're focusing on the wrong part of it. You
well,
keep
they've got and they've got
trying to
magnet.
shove. Oh,
They've got like those metal detectors now. The schools are
yeah,
buying metal detectors, which is
and
why I
and
just
and
feel
that's
like it's gone
like
completely the wrong
shoving
direction on.
like shoving cotton balls into a gaping wound. Like
It's also kind
it's
of
not
an
even a band-aid.
escalation, isn't it?
Mhm.
Like it escalates the level of violence that students expect and puts them on edge as well.
Yeah, it escalates.
So
It only escalates more violence. Doing that is
And
from
as they
from
counterproductive.
said,
personal
an
experience,
ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This is what these
and from
numbskulls
from
don't
personal
realize.
experience, from personal
First of
experience,
all,
I know that when you feel like you're in that dark spot and you feel like you're on that edge, if you go try to get help from somebody and you go reach out when you're feeling like you're on that edge and that help shoves you further off, that is the most damaging thing you can possibly have happen. And that happens every day in every school across the country. And when that kid feels like there's nobody in this world that's going to listen to me, and I'm crying out for help and nobody wants to hear me, and he's finally was able to find strength enough to go reach out and try to get a little bit of help, even if he's being aggressive when doing it, because the kids who are in the worst spot, they're going to try to push you away before they trust you. They're going to treat you like shit. They're going to treat you like an asshole. They're going to try to offend you. They're going to try to make sure that you're not like every other bullshit artist that blew smoke up their ass telling them you're going to help them because the
Yeah.
Yeah,
rest of the
it's all
world
about
did.
the building of trust. And the
Yeah,
school is not helping you to do that.
they
They have
they
policies
don't.
like if don't touch your friends. This is what they're being taught in preschool. In
Mhm.
preschool, I had to, as a preschool teacher, I had to teach my children, you don't touch your friends. I'm like, why am I saying that? Who told me to say that? And then they tell you things like, you can't.
Mhm.
I mean, it's we don't have a system of building trust. I think what they need to do if we're going to have schools is we need to have a class to teach empathy and like to teach to give you a chance to develop, like trust between the students and
We need to
the
have a
way that
class on
team
empathy, and
building.
I
we need a
think
class
going
on
to
empathy
like
and a class on check writing and laundry doing and food cooking and running an actual adult
yeah.
life. Because that's the
So
other
So
problem is
that
schools
brings us
don't
to
teach you life.
that totally brings us to our second big topic, which is UBI. That's all we talk about around here is the
Mhm.
universal basic income. What do you feel about basically, just spreading out resources so that nobody has to be in the situation of being impoverished to the point where they can't have food, for their kids?
I've said for a long time I would be willing to pay up to 50% of my taxes if we could make sure that everybody in the country got clothes, food, and a school and a house. Like I don't see why people just greed is one of the most damaging urges that we have, and people hoard what we have. The point now where I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but the income disparity is so massive that the richest person in the world could take like a third of their wealth, make everybody else in the country rich, and still be the richest person in the world. And
Real quick question. If you had that,
uh-huh.
like let's go down the path of for some reason UBI had passed when you turned 18, you had access to it. How different would your life be today? What path do you think you would have taken that
Completely different. Completely different. If I were able to, when I turned 18, let's take a hypothetical. If I turned 18 and then all of a sudden I was getting, say, $600 a month payment, but even that, which is not as much enough to live on, but even that, at 18, my life would have been entirely different. I had, because of my intelligence, I was really good on test scores. Excuse me. I was really good on test scores. I was offered a full ride scholarship to the Colorado School of Mine. I was also up for to get into Mensa. Both of those evaporated because my home life was so chaotic and unstable that I had no ability to actually go through with any of the wishes that I had for like I how am I going to study for anything when I can't afford clean clothes or a shower or anything? How am I going to focus on anything that's important when the entirety of my day is taken up with how am I even going to eat tonight? And there are kids, thousands of kids all across every state, everywhere that are going through that exact thing right now. That they don't know where their next meal is going to come from because their parents are cracked out in the bedroom and they don't have any way to fix it for themselves. What are they going to do?
Okay,
So, like,
I
listen. Listen, yes, I'm also for UBI, but here's the thing: you shouldn't need like money or you form of like UBI or casualty leave, whatever, just to do the right thing or help someone out. Because it's like, Mike and Amber, like they didn't have UBI when they, help Aaron
No,
get through those tough
but
times. And it's like, and
but
we
they had
can't just
resources.
say, okay, go ahead.
But they did have resources.
Yeah.
They did.
Them having
My,
resources benefited you.
yeah, they had resources that I couldn't even conceive of. That to them was normal. If you ask Mike right now, what did he do to save my life? He'd say nothing. He'd say he didn't do anything besides what a friend should do. And to him, it was he always looked at my family my parents with disgust because they didn't do things like make sure I had food, make sure I had clothes, make sure I had a shower. Like to him these were normal staples. But that's because he grew up in a 3-story house with a nice backyard that he never moved from.
Is
When
this
he was a kid, he
Michigan?
didn't realize this is Denver,
Oh,
Colorado. And he didn't realize that that's because his parents made a bunch of money and they were able to live comfortably their whole life, And I know that my poverty has stopped me from a lot of things. A lot of things. My poverty has stopped me. That my intelligence, my drive, my will just has not been able to overcome. And that is, I am not at all rare. I'm not everybody. There's thousands and thousands of people way worse than I am. You know,
And across the world, yeah.
I work graveyard shift in a gas station. Like that's I have to spend from 9 a.m. night till 7 in the morning working at a gas station to make sure that my family's taken care of. When my wife also has to work a full-time job, my kids have to work full-time jobs, just so we can scrape by. I don't see why we have to do that when there's people that make more than I'll ever see in an entire lifetime in a second.
And one of the biggest problems with depending on individuals to solve the problems of people in poverty is we're only going to talk to the people we personally care about or the celebrities. You're going to have people falling through the cracks when you depend on that. Yes, more people helping would mean less people suffering, but not on the level that you're ending poverty or ending suffering.
Yeah.
There's always going to be somebody who is left on the sidelines who feels like they're the one being overlooked, not you've helped that person. You have a line of probably 15, 20 friends that you could be helping right now, and you can't help any of them.
Well, the best proposal I've seen come out of this entire political cycle is replacing police officers with social workers. That to me is the best response. That not only for the apparent violent crime that everybody's yelling about within the political discourse, but for my personal area of focus, which is mental health, that would change so much. If instead of getting, if when I went to a therapist, if when I said something that might scare them, instead of having a cop show up at my door, if instead I might get talked with by more therapists, that would have changed my life. That it would take away. It's hard to reach out for help when you're afraid that by doing that it's going to crush your whole existence, and you're not going to get any help. All you're going to get is authorities destroying your life.
Right? Yeah. On the
What's
head.
better? Is it better to be shoved into an institution where and be stripped of your freedom? People who say they want to help you, or is it better to live in shit and still be able to go to the bathroom when you want to? Like,
wow. It's like instead of spending money on bombs, who spends money on hospitals, right?
Oh God, spend money on people. Convert every golf course to a homeless area. Turn that into free camping space in the city.
Right.
Stop the old rich white assholes from knocking their tiny ball across hundreds of acres of open land and give that open land to people.
Right. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head there. And it's like we're so quick to say people have to be punished and people have to be like monitored and but like hang on. People have to be like acknowledged and validated and helped, not monitored and but bothered and punished. It's like we have that's why this country is doing so bad. I'm so disgusted with with some of these people we have in leadership positions.
I talk to people. I've talked. My You Are Not Alone group I have has successfully prevented over 25 suicides, 3 school shootings, and helped 3 people get out of white National. And none of that happened by me telling the person that they were bad and wrong because they felt the way they felt.
Take the least effort,
Really important to remember, you cannot be validating these people's negative emotions to the extent that you're causing them to feel more negative about things. You cannot be negative to somebody who is in a negative place and expect them to come out feeling better.
Well, you also shouldn't be like
because-
trying to mandate
because-
like. You also shouldn't be trying to like mandate fake positivity or whatever and say like,
Right,
oh,
yeah.
you'll get better and stop
No,
being so
but-
down,
And
be
that's
nice.
the key. That's the key of keeping it real and keeping it granular, because fake positivity, that happens when people get sectioned off into stereotypes. If you think, oh, that person's just this way, I'm just going to keep them at arm's distance. When
It's bullshit.
Because it's hard for people to actually look at every person as a person. It's hard to do that. It takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot of energy, and people don't want to do that. But it's really true that if you feel like you're a monster and you feel like you're a worthless piece of shit, and people then reinforce that opinion and tell you that you are, then you're just going to prove them right.
And I really don't
gonna
think what I
sure
said about validating the positive aspects of somebody is the same thing as what you were talking about there, Izzy. I feel like that was a little bit like pulled off of what I said. I wasn't trying to say that you should like pretend to be happy. I was trying to say if you're trying to help somebody, you should try to uplift them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you should be like honest and authentic about it. That's the point I was trying to make, and I don't know why you would think it was like some sort of attack toward you or whatever. Like that, I'm just like saying that.
A spin off of what I was trying to say in a different direction that made it kind of seem a little bit like the point of that was to plaster positivity everywhere, which is not what I was trying to say. And I just wanted to clarify that point because I don't want to come off as trying to say that.
No,
that's not what I was thinking. I want that to be known.
And I think both of you are valid on that. I think that you're right. The authentic nature is really where we need to be. But there is also a phenomenon of people with the fake plastic niceness, and that's when the testing happens. That's when the people who you really are reaching out for help, they're going to test you to make sure you're not one of those plastic pieces of shit. That you're not fake and you're not just blowing smoke up their ass.
That's
you tell
right.
me you're going to help. You tell me you care. Okay, listen to me now. And then listen to me after I tell you you're full of shit. And then listen to me after I do something that's going to piss you off, because I'm going to test you. Right. I'm going to make sure that you're not like every other asshole around you. And and because we have so much fake nicety, that's why if you really want to help people, you have to be able to push through and realize that the ones who need your help the most are going to push you away the hardest.
Bingo.
They're going to test you and make sure that you're not full of shit. And that's why you have to give love the most to the ones that you think deserve it the least. The ones that you, in your head, write off right away. Well, that guy's a racist asshole. And that guy's a bigot. And that guy's an incel. Those are the ones that you need to open up the most to and be like, what's your real reality?
What's up?
When I was
who are you underneath all of this?
When I was a teenager, I was in such a bad emotional place that I had a strategy for repelling even the people who'd figured out that the people who really need help would test you. I was very good at completely intellectualizing any emotion I ever had and disengaging and being 100% superficial as a defense mechanism whenever needed. It really got me very far. But, it made me very unhappy too. So.
And it's a coping mechanism. This is survival mechanism and all that.
That phenomenon spun into a larger amount of people doing that exact same thing is what turns into 4chan. That exact phenomenon that you were just describing, put on mass scale and multiplied by thousands, turns into the negative toxic subgroups that we have today. That I'm going to I know exactly how to shut down every test, including the tests that are testing me. And now I'm going to do this because, and then you discover that there's other people that are doing that. And now you have a subgroup. And now you have an insular subgroup that has all the spikes that it needs to push out everybody make sure that it's an insular subgroup and be a whole lot of outgroups. Because to make your subgroup important, you have to have an enemy. It's when you're craving for someone to tell you that you're okay, and all you want is for someone to hold you and tell you that you're all right. If that hold comes along with you're going to be okay, but only if that person pays for it, then you're going to do something negative to make sure that person.
Yeah.
It has to be it has to be unconditional. Yeah.
I was always thinking that like what schools are missing is like a place where you can learn about yourself. Like ask yourself questions like what do you want? Who are you? Like what's bothering you? What's this? Like what good is all the algebra and math and science and English in the world when you're feeling like you want to shoot somebody, you know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's also the issue like when many schools will allow the parents to come and sit in with the classes or come and participate in various ways. Like they have parent volunteers to do all kinds of stuff in the schools. So even when I've had the opportunity to do that, I'd be in school and I would see that, here's a kid who's just crying in the classroom. He's sitting there just crying quietly. And my own child, because of course my
That
child
kid
is
was
there,
me.
otherwise why would I be volunteering? My child, that's his friend crying in the seat next to him, and my child is ignoring him and, straight face forward, straight at the teacher. This is teaching time, right? And I'm like, okay, so I quietly, go and talk to the boy by myself, and I'm thinking to myself, but nobody in the classroom acknowledges this, and that's normal, right?
Yeah,
So
no,
like,
and
if
that's
only
wrong.
they had if even they could have a culture of let's take a break if somebody is not feeling well and actually just talk to them, or why don't how about I pair you up with somebody who's your friend and you guys can go talk
Yeah.
it out.
Well, and that goes again with looking at the human, realizing that just because they're tiny doesn't mean they're not people. Just because they're small and little doesn't mean they don't have full worlds that they're dealing with. That
Right.
my 9-year-old has to have a therapist because she also has school shooter drills and has people around her that are talking about suicide. She's 9. And
Oh my god.
if you ignore that and think, well, she's just a kid who's going through problems and we just need to make sure she stays and does her schoolwork, then you're just building another person who's damaged. We need to
Right.
realize that we're starting at a very young age. Our kids, we've accelerated the amount of advancement our kids do really quickly. They're socialized very fast. And each one of them carries the sum total of human knowledge in their pocket. Everybody carries everything that everybody's ever learned on their tablet and in their phones. And that means that these kids that we're raising now are going to be the ultimate fact checkers, but also they're going to learn how to manipulate and get around all of the things that we thought we had built up, just like we did with our parents. Every one of us figured out how to lie to the old people when we were growing up and get away around all their ways of tracking all of us. Our kids are doing that at an exponential level. When that combines with the social situations we were talking about earlier, with the negative subgroups that reinforce that they can damage each other and that we can be the trolls, and then that gets exacerbated by the authorities like Trump, who are pushing and throwing gasoline on that fire, and then
Right.
and saying that now that negative subgroup, now that's the accepted positive group. That's just a recipe for disaster. We need to embrace those people and make them realize that I'm a human too, even though I disagree with you. And I'm not just a dirty liberal, I'm a human. And you're not just a redneck Republican, you're a human. And we need to take away those labels and strip off these superficial barriers that we've shoved into our lives before we fracture into a second civil war.
We all have intrinsic value. It's like no one's above anyone. That's literally what Andrew Yang was fighting for during his campaign. That was literally his rhetoric.
Yeah.
That's and I'm like, and that's what we need to make a commonality or like a normal thing in the society, because you know we need more people like Andrew Yang, more people like Aaron Stark, and various others, more people like me and my friends, because I feel that will save a lot more lives. It will definitely push us into the right direction. It will help us move forward, and it's like that's the only point I'm trying to make. And like, but when I see people who are saying like, oh, they're for the people, they love their families and children, and they're patriots, and they, you know, they care about others. I'm like, and then but they do the complete opposite. That's what pisses me off. Like, it's like they're lying in my face, because it's like it's killing my friends, it's killing me, it's killing various others who have potential to be something more and become like, future leaders and whatnot. And I'm like, it's sickening, and that's what really
It's,
gets me upset. And like, why I would go like
I think it's
very harsh.
I
Yeah.
think it's
Mr.
I think
Stark,
it's
are
important
you
to.
aware? Did you know about Andrew Yang during his
Uh-huh.
presidential
Yeah,
bid?
yeah.
So
Yeah, I
we
was a
were,
Yang fan. He was my top choice at the time would have been Mayor Pete. But yeah, I was on board with. I like a lot of Yang's policies. I hope he gets a position in cabinet, because I think that his stuff, a lot of his positions should be adopted. I think that he has a very strong future. I will be supporting him
well,
in the future too. He's a good guy, and
that's
just
really awesome.
personality wise, he was one of the best ones that I saw. Like I'd be
Yeah.
down for a future Yang Buttigieg combination.
Sure.
So Andrew Yang had very good street creds, but at the same time,
Yeah,
there's something you probably are not aware of, which is that in our group we had a set of 8 values. We had a set of 8 values that we were supposed to all sign up for if we were going to join the Yang Gang and so forth, right? And the 8 values that were that informed his campaign included things like grace and forgiveness, right? And what else did we have in our values? Do you guys remember?
Humanity first. Like, I mean, that pretty much
Humanity
summarizes
first
everything.
sums it
Secure the
up.
bag, if I recall,
Yeah.
was big.
So, but I think the reason I talk about the grace and forgiveness is I think that's one that we really have to work hard on, and it's very difficult for us. Like, we can easily say some of the other words seem to come easier to us, but the grace and
Mhm.
forgiveness part, like, has been really challenging in politics.
But you
when
got-
you
but
start
you gotta
talking
be-
Now I
about
feel bad for making a joke. Yes, I can completely agree. That's a good
You
point.
got to be careful with forgiveness though, because like
Yeah.
people who are toxic and like are like narcissistic have bad intentions, like Aaron's parents, like those in power. Like when they hear like, oh, humanity first, like, or being forgiveness, like they'll eat that up. Like, yeah, it's like, I'm only human and I've done my wrongs or whatever. Even though they really messed up a lot of lives, like even though you should like be a bit pragmatic and welcoming and stuff. Like if you just let everybody in, you're just opening essentially
Well,
your home to a
Izzy,
whole lot of
if I could,
Well,
Yeah.
forgiveness
here's
doesn't mean that you
here's
stop
here's
protecting
I
yourself.
have I have a point with that, because in my opinion, forgiveness has nothing to do with the person you're forgiving. It has to do with you. It's a personal decision that you've
Yeah.
made on yourself to release that person from giving any power over what you think about what's happening with that. Like I don't have any contact with my mom. I don't talk to her. I haven't for years, for a couple years now. Ever since I came out with my stories, she stopped contact with me. I severed all contact with my family. I have forgiven my mom for the things that happened in my life. That doesn't change the reality that they happened. That doesn't change the fact that they happened, the effects that they have happened, and that the reality that they caused is the reality that is now. Like none of that changed. But I don't have to carry with me every day the resentment that caused. Like I was able to forgive and move past that,
Right.
because the way I look at it, and I'd say this a lot, the past is like luggage. Okay, we can carry our past around with us all the time, and it wears down our arms, and we can drag it along on the ground, and it'll open up and spill everywhere. We have to pick all of our crap up and shove all our shirts back into the box, and we can drag it along with us, and we carry it along with us everywhere. And the longer we carry it, the more our arms are weighed down. But just like luggage, we can set it down and we can walk away from it. It's still
So
there.
that's
You can turn around. You can turn around and grab a shirt whenever you want to. If you want to pick it up and show everybody your stuff in your backpack, you can do that. You just don't have to carry it with you every single minute of the day. And that
Yeah.
is the when
Good point.
when
Yeah.
we're talking about these people who are in these negative groups that we're looking to give forgiveness to, and who whether or not we should give it, I think, and I have, we really need to give love to everybody. The only way to stop that troll from going into 4chan and being the best troll. The only way to stop that white nationalist from hating every black person around is by showing them that everybody around him is human and that he is too, and that you don't see him as a monster. The more
Yeah,
that he thinks, the more he thinks that you think he's a monster, the more he's going to show you that you're right.
so the forgiveness portion, I would say part of it is difficult for people to forgive when something is happening right this minute. Right? It's like, I can forgive you once you take the knife out of my back and stop stabbing me right now. But if you're stabbing me
Yeah.
right this minute, it's really hard to, oh, I
Yeah.
forgive you right now. It's like there's something happening right now. So a lot of people are
And
very upset with each
and if
other.
it's like
Like, who are you going to
repeat
vote for because it's
offender,
happening? But right after the election, I think, we can start putting those things down and say, okay, let's get back together. Let's focus on what we can actually agree on. Let's move forward. But I can see how it's a little
I look at this election. I look at this election in the sense that we need to look at it like Abraham Lincoln. That we need to do everything we can to keep our people together, because there are large amounts of people trying to drive us apart. There's people trying to drive every wedge into us they possibly can, trying to break us apart by, we hate this race, we hate this culture, we hate this religion, we hate this social. Every single part of our society they can break us apart with, they're trying to. The only way we can make through this is by sticking together, even with the people we don't like, even with the people that we
Yeah.
hate. We need to stick together, because if we don't and we break apart, then that's exactly what they're trying to do. Anybody on my side that starts talking about how maybe the blue state should secede, maybe California should break off, you are letting them win. You are letting that side win. Anytime that we need to say, like, the Republicans need to be ignored, or that group, that's all a bunch of racists, the sides that are breaking us apart are winning. That we need to look at every single person as an individual and let them then reevaluate their choices based on what we discuss afterwards.
right? Isms create schisms.
When the Nazis were rising in Germany, they thought at the beginning that there's like 60% of the populace were completely oblivious to what was going on. The Nazis only ever gained like 30-something% of the. They completely only had a minor population, but the rest of the populace was just oblivious and thinking that nothing was going to go bad and that it would just solve itself. Okay, but then after the war, the way that we were able to reconcile with them as a people and be able to adjust that was that they had to face the reality of what happened. We took the people and after the war, we took the German villagers and we led them through the concentration camps and we walked them through the atrocities. We showed them what happened. But then after that, we didn't demonize them and keep on attacking them. We let them sit and face what they did, and then we let them grow afterwards. And now, 70-something years after the fact, Germany is an ally of ours, and we've grown. And same thing with Japan.
Part of the reason
What was that?
part of the reason Germany was so vulnerable in the first place was because we were punitive the first time around during World War One.
Yeah.
So they were in a position to be manipulated.
Yeah. After
Yeah,
World
and they
War
were
One, they were a
manipulated,
mess.
and
Yeah.
they were manipulated by the exact social stratus that's happening right now, where we have a charismatic wacko leader who's leading unarmed or unlawed, unbadged militia groups as his thugs that are trying to join up. The SS started as the SA, which is like a freaking the unaffiliated group of thugs that then turned into the most destructive military police that they ever were. And that whole evolution happens when the negative subgroup that gets that positive reinforcement from negativity continues and doesn't have any counterbalance. That there's nothing that then say, hey, we need to stop, because they just didn't. They just stepped aside. We have the ability right now, with the mass communication that we have, with the ability of that I can talk in this conversation, we could potentially have people from literally all over the planet and every political persuasion in this conversation. But right now, we can break through those barriers that are getting set up, and we could stop the people who are trying to split us apart at the seams. And remember that even though that person next to me lives an entirely different life than I do and has an entirely different outlook on the world, he still deserves to live there. He still deserves to be there, even if he hates me. I have personally stood on the side of the KKK protesters screaming their vile stuff to protect them from the counter protesters when I was a teenager. Not that I agreed at all with their views. Their views are abhorrent and wrong and vile, but they have the right to speak their views and say what they want because they're human. And the only way to beat their views is with other views. And if we try to use sticks, then they'll use sticks too. And that's just what ends with everybody hitting each other with sticks.
Yeah, I think the point is that yeah, we shouldn't throw the book at them and grab our like torches and pitchforks because they do wrong. Yeah, we should be like understanding and see them as human beings. My only thing is like not just giving them like a free pass or a slap on the wrist for what they've
Oh,
done.
oh no,
Yeah,
no. That would be
like hold
ignoring
them
the
accountable
reality.
at to an extent.
No,
Yeah,
yeah, no. My the reason why I've cut my family off is because the damage never stopped. But that chaos didn't end in my family. My mom, the damage was still going up to this day. So I forgive you for what happened, but I'm not having you around my life. Like there's a difference between forgiveness and
right.
acceptance.
Yeah, yeah. I find that to be like true forgiveness rather than this when people will whisper in your ear and go, "Hey, I think you're wrong about this person. I mean, they've changed, so maybe you should just let them back into your life." It's like, okay, that's just
No,
I've got
that's
some
that's as
people I will never.
that's as fake as the people telling me that they were going to help me when they really weren't. You
right.
have to
That's
look at
what
the
that's
reality
what
of
I'm
the
like.
person. And a real person is full of flaws and dings and mistakes and bullshit and lies and niceness and happy and smiles. Like people are full of all of that. And if you think that that's part of it, yeah, you have to see the negative. And to grow, you have to acknowledge the negative. I had to in my to get out of my problems and to move out of my depression. I had to acknowledge that I was also doing a lot of that damage. I had to change my moods and my actions, and I had to change what I was doing with my life
Right.
because it wasn't. Other people were causing my reality to be terrible, but I was in my head, and I was the only one living my life.
It is kind of
So
hard.
what would you say the moral of your story is? Like if you were to at least that chapter of your life, what's the moral of the story? Because obviously you're in a new chapter, a new book, or whatever you'd call it. But like, what is that?
The moral of my earlier life would be that no matter how dark it gets, as long as you just keep on going, there's light. And just keep going. That the only constant in life is change. The only thing absolutely certain is tomorrow's going to be different than it might not be better, it might not be worse, but it is going to be different. And if you just keep on moving, then you will make it through it. One foot in front of the other, left foot, then right foot. Life is going to happen. It just is. The world is going to keep on turning. We can make a choice. Change is the only real thing, and we can either choose to fight against the change and let the change beat us down like water in the ocean and beat us down on the rocks and turn us into sand, or we can adapt with the changes and move like the water itself
It's
and
time to break the
grow and
cycle.
change. Yeah,
Yeah.
break the cycle.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's what I always say is that people say, "Oh, you'll never be able to change this. Forget about this UBI thing. It's never happening." And I'm like, "Of course it's going to happen because change
It's
is inevitable.
inevitable.
We just don't know
Change
which
is
Right,
thing is
like
pushing in the right
the
direction, right?"
end of
Oh,
slavery.
I have the same thing with third party. With people talk about third party voting. Every election cycle, people talk about third party voting, and we need to have a third party person in the office. And I say, well, the way to do that is you have to start small. You can't if a third party person was voted into office right away, then he would be powerless. He'd be neutered because we already have a neutered political system, and that's when half of everybody hates the other side. If everybody hates the person in power, well, then you're not going to get anything done. So you need to start with getting a small group of people who support you, then get into a larger group that supports you, that then turn into a fan base, that turn into a whole base, then turn into a voting bloc. By that point, you might be the authority. So was
So,
your label accurate or relevant? Like what was the initial label of the authority as the evil one, was that relevant? Or were you just waiting for your turn?
well, we have so we've had several different Unity Party. We had several different attempts at creating a third party. I think every election cycle we do, but we already have
Oh,
some that have
I
been
only have
trying.
like 10 more minutes. I gotta get off.
Okay.
Well, I do
So,
want
but
I do
in
want to
these
make a
in these
I do want to
time,
make a
in these moments when we're trying to create this third party, right? Everybody's always like, let's start a new party with a new name. Do it. But I think we actually have a good chance here. I was speaking to another Yanggang friend today. Well, look at all these humanity forward candidates to be existence, right? Some of them are going to win their seats. If we continue to have more and more people calling themselves humanity forward candidates, eventually we'll have enough of them. We can say, hey, we're just going to kind of move off quietly and start our own party. So it could be a different way, the more gradual, sometimes that way of
I think ranked choice voting is going to be really important in making sure that actually happens too. Because
and democracy dollars, yeah.
Very much so, democracy dollars too. Yes.
And I think that the worst thing with Citizens United, we need to get dark money out of politics and start and free up all that whole. Corporations are not people and should not be treated as such. And
See, like,
I think that that we've our greed and systemic biases have sabotaged a lot of our but we can potentially, again, incremental change, one step at a time. And this, even if it doesn't seem like it's changed now, take 2 steps forward today. If you take 1 step back tomorrow, keep moving forward the next day. You'll keep on going.
If we only have 10 minutes left with Mr. Stark, I would love for all of us to do our closings together and have maybe a chance to ask one last question, right?
Well, let me just start off like real quick. I just want to say like the biggest obstacle we have like here in this country, and even like in other similar societies, is that we have a system that doesn't really work for us. But we got to make that happen. We got to like somehow find a way to wipe out the corruption. However, that takes a while and it takes a lot of effort. And unfortunately, not enough. There aren't enough people that have that kind of time. Like you got a bill due tomorrow, or you got all these other issues happening. You got to find something to like curve all of that, so you can have the energy to fight back and go against the grain of the system, and and be prepared and stuff. And that's the goal. Like, what's the quickest way to to help others so they won't just like die off? Because like I'm gonna tell you, there's not going to be enough of us who's going to be be uh be back in like in the Yang Gang, in 2024. Like it's a it's a dubious thought or whatever. But in like we need to give them energy, give them means, resources, so they can once again like go join the movement, or even like join, become, get on the front lines and stuff. But right now people are just like so distraught and so messed up that and we're like so divided and just corrupt that it's like it's very hard for that. But we need to find ways to like give us the energy and the ability to do that. And it's like I'm thinking like not just UBI, but like making sure that we see every single one of us as human, and no one is left behind, and no one is above anyone, and we all matter, and stuff like that. Because we gotta like we can't be like the ones at the at the top who are screwing us over. We gotta like be better, and like start just yeah, it's like humanity first and all. Like we should like really embody that and stuff.
Yeah,
I
and I
agree.
think I would love to practice that with you every day when we get on the podcast, but also when we're out on Twitter and living our lives right now. We could be practicing those principles that you're talking about every day, and whether or not 2024 is the goal, because I know Mia wants stuff done now, faster. we're not waiting till 2024. So
I think our present situation is we need to keep the people together, and we're hope. I'm on board for working towards for collective goals after this election. My main goal is defeating Trump, and right now, I think that every human on the planet, every person in America should vote for Biden, because it's the way we're going to beat Trump. After that, we will. There's a lot of roads to fix it. I like I said, I think the should get position in the cabinet, and I see a lot of a big future for him. I think that in 2024, 2028, we're going to see his name on quite a lot of ballots. That he's going to be much more visible. He's young and has a lot of future.
Yeah, he's going to be
Are
well
you talking about
established.
Andrew Yang?
him and Mayor Pete, the first time I saw Obama speak, he struck me the way that those two did, and so I see they've got quite a future. But did anybody have any last questions for me?
So you like Obama a lot. Huh.
Yeah, I'm going to start off with a closing. Let me close.
I mean,
Let me go ahead and close
anyway.
and then pass it to Mia. My name is Faye Ku, and I'm on Twitter at Palestine Math, and you can find me on Facebook as myself. Okay.
I'm Faye Doney. My username is Tisdoney, Tisdoney. A few other platforms, but thanks for coming on. Very powerful story that you shared, and you've been through some stuff. So it's good that you are a proof of concept that you don't have to live there. You can pack up and move on, right? So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Mia, yeah.
My name is Mia Dunford. I'm at Mia Songbird on Twitter and Mia Songbird on Frey.world. This week, on the 3rd, we will be having a humanity hang based around the elections. Reverend Wendy Williams will be there, so that's always great. I love her. And we will be doing that on the 3rd, just a few hours before. And thank you for being on, Aaron. It was really informative. I really appreciate the trauma that you've been through and you've recovered from. More than anything, the change has to start with individuals too. As much as we talk about how we have to support each other more, you have to be ready to be supported too. And I thank you very much for being one of those individuals who was ready to take the arms that were willing to help.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Izzy, do you want to do yours?
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is Izzy Bolden, IZZYBOLDEN. I'm on Discord at IzzyB. Twitch, Izzy Reborn 92, IZZYREBORN 92. I'm also on YouTube at my channel being Izzyland YT. IZZYLANDYT, and I also have a podcast called Izzyland Uncut, where we talk about various things with little to no interruptions and raw and authentic emotions. Just diving in on various issues, including those that don't get much coverage. Like things like mental health and stuff. So, yeah. So and if you're interested in being the next guest, definitely DM me, on Twitter. And we'll definitely, set it up. So,
Ariel?
I guess that leaves me. My name's Ariel. You can find me Ariel's on Twitter. That's ARIELS. And I'm also Revolutionary Thinking on YouTube. I just put in a CoffeeZilla video on there, my interview with him, and yeah, I think that it's interesting how we always look out to like different people to get our cues and like leadership and people up at the top, but I think like to a certain extent we can all kind of like be our own leaders and our own kind of like sparks of light, because before Aaron Stark's name got out there or Andrew Yang's name got out there, they were just random people until they shared a story. Everyone like has the ability to kind of like create a story from their behaviors and then kind of like be that light. So we can all do that like within ourselves and come together on that. And
create your own legacy.
Right. We don't need to kind of look until, oh, this person in leadership or this influencer is going to do this. We can kind of just like become our own leaderships and our own influencers and get that energy and all get together and do something good, I think. Yeah.
So, Mr. Stark, how can people find you?
I'm on Twitter You can find me at on Twitter. I'm StarkDad1313. You can find me on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, just Aaron Stark. And then my Facebook group is You Are Not Alone. It's all one word, but each one's capitalized. You Are Not Alone. It's about 4,500 people and about 72 countries. People all over the world. About the support group for love and support for people who are in that dark spot that have some.
Is everybody?
Well, I might
So,
just
yeah.
join that.
Has
I didn't know
everybody
you
said?
had
Has
that.
everybody said goodbye? Because I want to say goodbye, Aaron.
I have to make
Go
a
ahead.
quick correction. I said Wendy Williams, and I meant Wendy Hamilton.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I was about to ask you, is that Reverend Wendy? Because I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah, I don't know why I said Williams.
Aaron, so thank you so much for coming on the show. Really,
How
thank
you
you for
doing?
being emotionally open and being a good role model for people and running those groups. You're the kind of person we need who's come back from a really dark place and is doing something good with it. So thank you so much for your good work and for coming on the show, being open and honest with us. That said, I really wish we had more time because this is a political show, and I got to tell you, I'm completely opposed to Trump, but I see Obama, Pete Buttigieg, and Joe Biden by extension as corporatists who are no less dangerous. Perhaps we could talk about it another time. I would love to. Anyway,
I'd be down for that.
great. Please, we'll do that. We'll schedule you again in a few weeks after this whole thing is we've had time to digest it. So
It's incredibly generous of you to give up your evening alone with your spouse to be with us. So hopefully you still have some time to enjoy. And same with you, Mia.
Yeah, I'm about to have some of the delicious dinner she just cooked me and watch a Halloween movie with it.
you
Absolutely.
enjoy, sir. Thank you again for your time. Goodbye. Happy
Good
Halloween.
night.
Right.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Yo.
Happy Halloween.
What a good guy. Really appreciate him. All right. Well, I'm going to have a little social stream, I think, after this, in like an hour or two. I have a costume I really should put on.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop my Twitch stream. How about that?
Yeah. If you come back for the social stream and you stream to Twitch, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll just stream to Twitch. 'Cause if you stream to Twitch, I can stream to YouTube too. Anyway, thanks for watching. Here, I'm going to end this YouTube stream.